Today, I'm going to go over the exact formula that I use to crush my cravings and lose 80 pounds. So, I've coached thousands of women around the world, and probably one of the top 5 reasons as to why women are not losing weight, why they're not reaching their goal, why they are always losing motivation is because of their cravings. They can't resist, they go overboard, they say, screw it, I'll start next Monday. I already ruined the day. What's the point? And then it snowballs and it completely derails them. And so, with what I call the taste method, I've created the taste method. When you implement this method, your cravings are going to go way down. It's not completely disappear altogether. I can confidently say, after losing 80 pounds and implementing this taste method, have no cravings. I had zero cravings. And I used to have cravings all the time. I used to want pizza all the time. I used to love cookies all the time. Those were my two big downfalls. And now I could, pass. I could pass up on the little problem. But it took a while. But I can pass up on the no problem now because of this method. So let's dive right in. So the TASTE method is an acronym, TASTE. The first T, so whenever you are hit with a craving, we all know that second, we're like, I want it, and then you go get it, right? Or I want it, and you have this intense battle in your head, and then you give in normally, right? The problem with that battle is this. When we make a decision on the craving, and we say, no, I'm not going to go give in, when we make that decision, normally it doesn't last, right? So we end up going against our word and giving in anyway. Or we say, no, I'm not going to eat that thing, but we're really not happy about it, right? We made this decision and we don't like it. We wish we could have that thing, but we know it's not going to help our progress. So we say no, but we're not happy. Or we do say yes and we give in to the thing and then we just feel bad about ourselves. We feel guilty and we're in this negative spiral, this bad loop. So no matter what decision we make, we're still unhappy. So so unhappy. So the first T at the top here, it stands for toss. Okay, so this may seem very simple. However, it's like the most easiest strategy, so you don't even have to deal with cravings. Half the time a craving shows up is because we knew the food was there, or we saw somebody else eat the food, or we saw it when we opened the fridge. Just by knowing that it's there, it gives our mind an option. And in the back of our mind, it sits there, right? So this is something that, if we're at work and we know we have leftover pizza in the fridge, we get excited to get home and eat pizza all day, right? Or, we get excited to go home and eat that thing in the fridge that we've been waiting for all day. Well, if we simply just tossed it, got rid of it, right? It's like extra Halloween candy in the house, extra chocolates after the holidays, right? Extra dessert after a big gathering. If you simply just tossed it, got it out of your house, so you could throw it in the garbage, you can give it away to a neighbor. I always give it to my neighbors on both sides of me. I'm always giving them away food because I don't want it anymore. I really don't want it, and I know even if I do want it, I don't need it. I don't need it. So tossing is your number one line of defense. Now, here's what I will say about tossing out food. Some women are like, I hate wasting food. It really bothers me. Look, I totally get it. I'm not telling you to throw out big meals, right? But I am telling you, if there's a pack of brownies with 10 brownies left, maybe it was like a 50 pack of 2-bite brownies, there's 10 left. The whole house does not need these brownies. You definitely don't need them, especially if you're somebody that's still struggling with stopping after one bite, like you're going to eat all those 10 at once kind of thing. Just get rid of them. Give them away to your neighbor or throw them out right away. Okay? It takes eating them off the table and it's going to free up your mind to stay focused and make other decisions instead of having that battle in your head of should I have, shouldn't I have, should I have, shouldn't I have. It takes up way too much time. It's exhausting. You don't have to do that anymore. So toss it out. On a side note, I once had a client who we were practicing this method with because she grew up in a household that was a little lower on the economical status. So they didn't have a lot of money. And so throwing out food was kind of like a big sin in their house, right? Like we couldn't even afford to begin with, and now you're throwing out. So she had this habit of, she wasn't in that economical status anymore, but she was still in that, I guess we can call it hoarding mindset of where she didn't want to throw the food out. And one day she told me, she's like, I ate an entire bag of pretzels last night, one of those big braided pretzels. And I asked her, okay, I said, why was it in the house? Why was it in the house? And she said, oh, well, my kids wanted it and I don't want to deprive my kids. And I said, you know what? Completely fair. Of course, like if you were going on a weight loss journey, you don't impose that journey on anybody else, especially on children, because what you're trying to do is set a good example for them and teach them healthy habits. But here's the problem. Number one, if you need to lose weight, if you want to lose weight, that inherently says that you aren't 100% sure on how to eat healthy for your body just yet. And if that's the case, that means you don't know how to inherently help somebody else eat healthy 100% for their body just yet. And so, what that means is your children are still learning, and you need to learn first before you can teach your children. And I can tell you that if you use the same mindset and the same habits that you were taught or that you're currently practicing, and you're teaching your kids that, then one day they're going to end up in the same spot as you, struggling, overindulging, slaves to their cravings. That's kind of the world they're on. And I know that you don't want that. And so I was talking to this client and I was like, okay, do you see how they don't need pretzels either? And it's not like there's good food and bad food. No, no, there's no good and bad. All food is good. It's, is this food serving me for my goal at this moment? Is this food not serving me my goal at this moment? Right? So for the children, if there weren't pretzels in the house, she wouldn't have given in, right? And the children wouldn't have known any better. They could have snacked on an apple. They could have had a second portion of dinner. There's lots of different ways around it. And so tossing it is going to be the easiest, fastest line of defense. Okay? Now, the A stands for avoid. So let's say you can't toss it. Let's say your kids bake a whole batch of cupcakes for school next week, so they have to stay in the fridge all weekend, and you're gonna be like, oh God, how am I gonna resist all weekend, right? So the first thing is, or if you can't throw the stuff out, or you can't bring yourself to throw the stuff out, you gotta avoid it. What does that mean? That means strategically rearranging your environment so you do not run into the craving as much. When you do not run into the craving, it won't pop into your mind and you won't have to have a battle all day long in your mind of should I, shouldn't I? Okay? So a couple different ways to avoid. So the first thing is if the food is sitting in the fridge, one of the best ways is put the craving food, the food that you know you shouldn't be eating right now, put it in a solid Tupperware that's not see-through, right? Because half the time when we open our fridge and we look at the Tupperware, if we can see what's in it, we want to eat it, right? So use a solid Tupperware so you can't see what's inside and put it in one of the fridge crispers, right? So it's shut, and every time you go to open the fridge, every time you're going to cook for somebody, we don't stare it in the face and we don't have to say no, right? We're just taking away one of those extra battles. So that's the first thing. Solid Tupperware in a crisper, okay? Now, the other thing would be to do to kind of reverse that would be put the healthy food in the clear, nice glass containers and make sure it's chopped and prepped on an eye-level shelf, right? Because what are you more likely to eat? Fresh chopped broccoli in a nice see-through glass container, or broccoli still in the plastic bag from the grocery store, shoved into the crisper, attached to the stem still? Right? Like, which one are we more likely to grab when we're on a go, when we don't have energy, all of that. So you got to put the stuff that we don't want to be eating right now, make it less tempting, make it look less appealing. So crisper, solid containers are great. Let's say you have to put it in the pantry, right? It's in the pantry. Rearrange the pantry, put it high on the pantry. So if you were going to reach for it, you need to go get a little step ladder, which is inconvenient, which might be a deterrent for you, which is awesome. And put it high up. So every time you walk into the pantry, you don't remember that it's there. You're not always reminded that it's there. Oh, that's there. Oh, that's there. I shouldn't have that. I should have that. Right? If we've got the Chips Ahoy cookies or we've got the Lay's sour cream and onion chips staring at our face, like we're only strong for so long, right? Like the most successful people with health and their weight loss, they don't even put themselves in the way of temptation. They rearrange their life so they don't even have to say no to things. They just don't run into temptation as much. So that way, when they do face temptation, they have a full battery of willpower to say no against. A lot of times, the women that I coach, they set up their lives so that they're always having to say no, right? Like there's donuts in the break room. Their husband eats snacks late at night. Their kids always want them to cook food for them. The family wants junk food left at home, right? So you're kind of fighting from all angles, and it can be really frustrating. So avoid it. Okay. Another way to avoid would be talk to the people in your house. So let's say you can't toss out the food, and let's say you can't really avoid it, right? Because you cooked dinner and you didn't want to eat that dinner, but the kids want to eat that dinner, so it has to be seen for them in the fridge. So they know where it is. And let's just say the whole house is they all eat sugar snacks and they all eat it on eye level in the pantry, right? So it's really tough to avoid. Well, then what you can do, another uncommon way, but really helpful way to avoid, is start to set boundaries in the house with the people that you live with, right? So let's say your husband always eats popcorn late at night and be like, hey, honey, I'm trying to get healthy. And I know I know that you do want to change how you're eating right now. I'm not going to make you. I don't think you should. That's up for you to decide. But I would really like some help. Would you mind if you're gonna eat popcorn or you're gonna have M&Ms late at night, could you put it in a small bowl for yourself and then hide the container from me? So that way it's not left on the counter and I start nibbling. Or that way your big bowl isn't enough for both of us. And right, so like little strategic things where it's like, oh, it just makes it a little harder for me to access. Same with the kids, right? You can start talking to the kids and it's like, hey kids, mommy's just trying to be healthier. I want our house to feel better, be more energized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop buying so much junk food. You can still have whatever you want. You just got to let me know and I'll pick it up for you. But I'm going to pick up the smaller container so there's not as much in the house, right? So let's say you pick up the single serving chip bags instead of the big chip bags. You leave them on the top of the pantry and the kids can grab one and go, right? Or you can say, or I'm only going to go shopping once a week and you could have one thing whatever your treat of the week is. And that way they still get their treats, but there's not enough for you because you only gave them the limit of one. So you're less likely to be tempted to eat their stuff, right? So that's another way of avoid. But you do have to put some effort. If we're not going to toss things, you have to put effort into rearranging your environment a little bit so you are not having to say no as often. Okay, so that's the first one. Now, the second one. Look at me counting. I got to go back to kindergarten. Now the S in the taste method is sidetrack. So this is if you cannot toss out the food, if you've already set up your environment to avoid things and that craving still hits, what we do is we sidetrack. So the problem with cravings is that for so long we've given into them pretty much immediately. We have an impulse and we act. So we are not very good at delaying gratification. We have become not very good at impulse control when it comes to our cravings. And so what sidetracking is going to do, it may or may not change the outcome, right? You may still crave and give in. That's okay. That's not the point of the S in the taste method. The point of sidetracking is to prove to yourself that when you get a craving, you don't have to act immediately and that you can change how the whole pattern plays out. Because normally there's a pattern that we stick to, right? Our husband brings out the M&Ms or that bowl of ice cream late at night, and that's normally our habit to join in, right? Normally my husband orders two appetizers when we go to a restaurant, and that's when I give in, right? Like, so there's a trigger. Or I had an emotional day at work, and normally I go home and I want to have a huge peanut butter sandwich and eat peanut butter out of the jar, right? Like, that was for me. I had stressful day. I would go home and I would want to eat peanut butter out of the jar. And so I'm not saying that you have to say, no, I cannot eat peanut butter out of the jar. That's not what I'm saying, because if it was that easy, it would have worked already and you wouldn't be watching this video. So sidetracking simply proves to your subconscious that even though you got a craving and you've literally repeated the same patterns for that craving hundreds and hundreds of times over your life, now you can make that pattern look slightly different. And if you can prove to yourself that the pattern can play out different and look slightly different, then your subconscious will start to believe that you can actually change the habit altogether. And that way we work on it slowly instead of saying, go cold turkey, don't give in your cravings. Because that's not realistic, right? Especially because I don't want to live in a world where I can't eat pizza, right? We just need to learn how to control that craving, choose when to eat it, decide when we're not going to eat it, and then we're not tempted anymore, and then be able to practice moderation when we do give in. So sidetracking, how do we do that? The best way is being able to recognize, oh, I have craving. I'm going to put a timer on my phone for 5 minutes. I call it inserting time. Why do we insert time? Because again, we're trying to practice impulse control, right? We don't want craving, eat, craving, eat. That is just, we've less, it's like our animal brain working. We're not animals. We don't need to be like, I'm feeding, and then we go crazy, right? That's when we overeat and we realize we're not even hungry, okay? So sidetracking would be, I'm going to put a timer on for 5 minutes, then I will make my decision. I will come back to it. Okay, the food's not going anywhere. You can do this when you're at a social event. You can do it at a wedding. You can do it at your home on a Friday night. You can do it when you're at the movie theaters. You can literally use this method anywhere. Okay, so I'm getting a craving. I would really like to eat blank, but I just got that craving, so I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to say yes or no in 5 minutes. Now, what happens is in 5 minutes, maybe that craving went away. Awesome. Now you're not even tempted. Maybe that craving became less intense and your emotions went down, and so you can make a more calm, rational decision. So maybe you're still able to say no, or maybe you're saying, okay, I'll only have half of it instead of a whole of it, right? So you can make a better decision. And worst case scenario is you still give in, you still have that thing, and you still feel a little bit of guilt about it, but you can at least feel comfort in the fact that you reprogrammed that habit a little bit. You showed yourself that you can still make time and think about it. You're not a slave to having it look the same every time. You're not a slave to always giving into the craving. You can pause and make decisions, right? So sidetracking, you could be like, you could just simply put a timer on your phone, come back, and when it beeps, you can go make your decision. You can go be like, okay, I'm gonna read a chapter of my book first. Okay, I'm gonna clean the bathtub first. Okay, I'm gonna paint my nails first. Okay, I'm gonna go grocery shopping first, right? Like it could be I'm gonna distract myself with something first, then come back to it. It could be just putting a time limit on it and coming back to it. It could be doing a task and then coming back to it. Basically, you keep your mind off of it and you're inserting time so that you can just chill out, make a better decision, or at least make a less emotional decision and reroute that pattern, even if it just plays out different or looks different, but we still give in. Okay. Now, the last T here, or the last two rather, the T in the taste method here is trade. So, if you couldn't toss it out, if you couldn't avoid it and you're seeing it too often, the craving's still coming, you sidetracked yourself and then you still want it. You're still having that battle in your head of like, ooh, I have to really go for that thing. If you still want it, then the first thing you're going to do is just swap it for something healthier first, right? And again, we're having this trade. And by choosing this trade, we're not saying you're not going to have the pizza. Go have that piece of broccoli instead of the pizza. That's not what we're saying. We're say go have a healthy option first, then have the craving if you still want it, right? Because a lot of the times when we're hungry, we're actually just thirsty. And a lot of us when crave things, we're just looking for a hit of dopamine. We're looking because it's our stress reliever or something that we do when we're bored. We emotionally, or it gives us these feelings of nostalgia. Like there's some reason we are craving the food for what it's going to do for us. And normally it's like this hit of like dopamine, kind of like we're getting this high. It's raising us up. It's lifting our mood from the day, especially if we didn't have like the best day or we didn't have an exciting day. There's nothing else fun that happened in the day. We go to food for fun sometimes. So trade it out. The easiest thing you trade it out for is a protein shake. A scoop of protein powder in water, chug it down. That's going to make sure that you're not actually physically hungry. That's going to give you the most thermogenic food. Protein, meaning it's going to satiate you the most. So you really won't be hungry at all after that. And then it's strictly just a craving, right? It's like, I just want that because I want that. It's not like I want that because I'm actually hungry. So then you can decide, now that I'm not hungry, I can make a more rational decision again. And do I still want the thing? Okay, maybe I'll only have one bite. Maybe I'll only have half. Maybe I'll eat it, but I'll eat it slower, right? So then you're able, again, by adding all of this time in between giving into the craving, you've now given yourself the opportunity to listen to yourself, ask yourself questions, and really play it out, okay? So trading it could be, you could do the healthy option like a fruit. It could be veggie. It could be a chicken breast instead of, some other kind of like a deep fried chicken. So a healthy alternative or just a healthy trade is what we do first. Then go ahead and give into your craving if you want. You're not going to have nearly as much room and yet to overeat, and you probably won't even want it as much. So you're going to be much more strong when you have to face a temptation. Now, the last part here, the last letter in our taste method is energize. Okay, so what does that mean? If you went through this whole process and then he still gave in, okay, or you didn't even give in, or you were strong, okay, if you went through the whole taste method, now what's happening is that was kind of a battle. Because we're still getting used to overcoming our cravings, that was a battle. It was mentally exhausting, and our willpower battery is drained, right? We had to use some strength. We had to use some brain power. We're a little weaker in that battery. So what that means is you have to be aware of that and be extra careful with what's happening that day and the day after, because we all know that if we overeat on one day and we think we've ruined the whole day, we say screw it. And then the whole day goes to crap, right? When really didn't have to. You could have had 4 cookies and still drop on the scale the next day. But truly, when we do this properly. So we think it goes to crap, or we have one bad day on a Wednesday, and then we're like, "Ah, screw it, the rest of the week's ruined anyway." So then we were much more likely to have another craving attack on the Thursday. So knowing this, knowing that we are more susceptible and vulnerable, we must energize. So that means strategically making sure the rest of the day or the next day you are protected. So maybe that's rescheduling plans with a girlfriend. Because if you know you're going to go out to lunch with her, you're gonna order the appetizer, the entree, 2 desserts, then go out for drinks, you know what I mean? Like, you're gonna go overboard. So give it one extra break day where you can get back on track. Maybe it means if I'm gonna allow myself a piece of cheesecake today, I gotta make sure that I meal prep my dinner tomorrow so that I'm full and don't go for the cheesecake simply because I don't feel like cooking anything, right? So it's just putting up barriers and protectors so that even when you're a little more weak than normal, you have things in place that make the healthy decisions the easy decisions. And that way, if you give yourself an energized rest of the day or an energized one day after we kind of had this whole battle, you can get back on track much easier. Okay, so that is a taste method. Just avoid sidetrack, trade, and energize. This completely demolished my cravings. I don't deal with any cravings whatsoever. Food has no control over me. It took me so long to figure out how to do that. For so long, I thought I was a slave. For so long, I thought I had eating disorders because I would just go crazy and I would binge eat and then I would eat so much I would make myself throw up. Like it was very, and I was always obsessed with food in my mind. I felt guilty and I thought I had to skip meals and starve myself and run extra mile on the treadmill to make up for it. But seriously, this taste method, it just is a smarter way to approach food and it gives you back the power because you have the power. You are not a slave to your cravings. They are simply a habit. Good news, if it was a habit we built, it is a habit we can unlearn and replace.